Yes, we are live. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. This is the first panel discussions for the Polkadot DeFi Alliance. Many more to come. As you've seen, we did a lot of progress in the past few months. The alliance has been growing. We've introduced more reputable projects, and we are happy to see that there are so many registers and people attending this event. We believe that this is the first one, but we believe this will grow even more. Our goal is to expand those activities beyond panel discussions. Basically, we want to have like a single hub where all the projects can also submit certain proposals for bounties, open career slots, etc. So today we have Equilibrium, Moonbeam, and Interlay, and myself. I'm from Reef. I'm Denko. I'm the CEO of Reef Finance. I guess we can start with a round of introductions, and then we can keep discussing and go to the questions, and after that we can take some community questions as well. So yeah, Lesley, please start by introducing yourself, and thanks.
Great. So my name is Lesley. I'm responsible for business development and customer success at Equilibrium. It's a real great pleasure to be here, especially since this is the inaugural panel session of the DeFi Alliance. And I want to thank you, Denko, for the invitation. I think this is a really great idea. What is Equilibrium? Just to make it short, Equilibrium is the first interoperable money market, and is of course building on Polkadot. What we do is we offer all the main DeFi primitives in one convenient user interface. So that's a cross-chain lending platform with major crypto assets. That's synthetic asset generation, perpetuals, margin trading, and our own cross-chain DEX. And actually, it's also worth mentioning that before we ever created this project on Polkadot, we've been in DeFi for quite a while. So our founder, Alex Malikov, is a co-founder of Changelly, which is, I think, a platform that you probably all know. Our mission at Equilibrium is that with this project, we want to expand the scope of the current DeFi market so that it can reach its full potential and include all the main assets. And some of our milestones that we've already reached right now, we're pretty proud of them, is we've, for example, created the industry's first insurance policy. We've just recently done a major token swap for a native asset, our new native asset EQ, and gathered about $6 million US. We have a grant from the Web3 Foundation for a financial palette, which we're hoping and trust will bring some benefit to the whole DeFi community on Polkadot. And with some key partnerships going on with, let's say, Binance, Chainstamp, and of course my colleagues who are with me here on the call today, Moonbeam and Interlay. And we also, what sets us apart, we have some very unique features like a risk mechanism and a bailsman solution, which solve some of the key problems of DeFi, such as the experience that MakerDAO had on Black Thursday last spring. So that's it in a nutshell from me.
Thank you, Lesley. Nate, do you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks for having us, Denko. So I'm Nate Hamilton. I'm responsible for business development for PureStake. We're the team behind Moonbeam. So Moonbeam is an Ethereum-compatible smart contract platform built to be a parachain on Polkadot. And so the real value that we focus on is this like-for-like compatibility with Ethereum. So Ethereum platforms and developers are able to basically take their Solidity-based smart contracts, deploy them to Moonbeam, and they should work out of the box. And so we have a lot of different partnerships kind of spinning up in integrations with folks on this call. And so we're excited to kind of see that grow. But we think that really providing this Ethereum compatibility is a great way to enable teams to basically have an easy on-ramp into the Polkadot ecosystem and kind of expand from there. So, that's really what we're focused on today.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro. Alexei, Please tell us more about Interlay and yourself.
Cool. Hi, thanks for having us. I'm Alexei. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Interlay. Interlay is a research-oriented company that started out of Imperial College. We've been doing research in the blockchain space since 2014, starting with various security issues, L1, L2 scaling, and then focused on interoperability for the last 2 years. And essentially, we are building the trustless Bitcoin Polkadot bridge based on the top-tier research that we've done before. And our goal is essentially to provide Bitcoin to the Polkadot ecosystem in a fully trustless and decentralized manner. So you as users don't really have to trust us or anybody else at all, and actually always have the guarantee that you can always get your Bitcoin back, or basically be reimbursed if something should go wrong. But we essentially prevent that as far as we can. And yeah, we're looking forward to integrate with as much protocols as we can and provide everyone with the support necessary to be able to provide new DeFi products for Bitcoin and Polkadot.
Awesome, thanks for that. So let me tell everyone a little bit about Reef. So Reef Finance is we call the DeFi OS, or the gateway to DeFi. Basically, I call it like one layer above the current DeFi infrastructure. So our goal is to help the users augment the landscape and make better decisions, and lower the technical barrier of entry into DeFi, so they can easily get exposed to financial primitives. For example, the ones that Equilibrium is working on. Through Reef, people will be able to access them. We are planning to deploy our infrastructure on multiple chains, so it's a multi-chain solution. And this way, the users can just come into one place. They can choose their risk levels, the types of baskets that they want to get exposed to, and with just a few clicks, they are basically exposed to DeFi and the yields that this landscape offers. Additionally, we are working on fiat gateways as well as a debit card, so it will be very easy for the users to spend their yields. So that's what Reef is about. I'm also like hosting this current panel, so I have prepared like multiple questions. I think they're very interesting discussion when it comes to the Polkadot ecosystems. Some are more general, some are more specific. So I think we can have a pretty good discussions about some of those things. I'm pretty sure a lot of people here are interested to hear what our approach is when it comes to certain things in the Polkadot ecosystem. So one of the most frequent questions that myself in Reef I encountered was why did we choose to build on Polkadot? What was the reason? So I think we can maybe each of us can have like a quick round, like and tell the users more about the process of your company, what went through determining that Polkadot is the best choice. Like how did you evaluate the other ecosystems? I know Equilibrium has been present in multiple ecosystems as well. What was your criteria? How did you decide it? So maybe can walk us through the decision making process.
Okay, so I'm guessing, Denko, that was directed at me to start.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, for us specifically, at least, especially with our particular use case, not only within DeFi as a whole, but specifically lending and the DEX, obviously scalability is one of the key points for us, right? So with that in mind, when we set out to create our architecture, we wanted a better alternative to the scalability that's on Ethereum. So actually we started with EOS, which, as you know, is highly scalable and which can reach up to 4,000 transactions a second, which is of course considerable. And that was already a move in the right direction, especially considering the fact that Polkadot was not around at the time, so it really wasn't an option yet. But as time moved on and we saw Polkadot coming up, realized that we really need another element, and that's exactly interoperability. So we believe that interoperability is actually really key, not just for us in our use case. We think that it's the future of blockchains, essentially, as a technology and of Web3. And so basically, if you look at the evolution of blockchains, you can say that what they have done is that they've actually demonopolized siloed data systems and decentralized them. But at the same time, the next step now, after they've done that, is to break those silos within blockchain monopolies as well. And in fact, it's interoperability that's going to do that. So with that in mind, that's the first point. The second point is that for us, specifically our products, pooled lending, with the objective of maximizing liquidity, obviously interoperability is a key factor because that's going to give us the opportunity to include multiple digital assets and enable them for our use cases, which is exactly what Polkadot enables with the cross-chain functionality. So that being said, and with the scalability, those two factors taken together, Polkadot is the obvious choice.
Sure. So I'll just go next. We'll just stay in this. Maybe next one we'll flip it, and Alexei can go first. But for Pure Stake, we come from it from kind of an infrastructure background. We kind of started out in that side of the house, and we started to kind of evaluate where we wanted to kind of go provide more infrastructure support. And so we looked kind of across the board at all the kind of new layer ones coming out, and the new proof of stake networks. And there were a couple things that Polkadot really hammered home for us. One was we were always driven towards a multi-chain future and problems of like cross-chain interoperability. And if you look at Polkadot, that's really their goal. And so that was a big piece. But something that I think sometimes gets overlooked is the community that Polkadot has created. And this was 2 years ago when we started supporting Polkadot. There was just this amazing organic ecosystem that the Polkadot and Web3 team, the Parity and Web3 team had really pulled together. And so when you look at that and you see people building because they believe in the mission, they believe in what Polkadot can do, that's really powerful. And so you kind of put those two together, and it just made a lot of sense. They had a lot of great resources, from the Substrate Builders program to the Web3 Foundation and their grants program. They just had kind of everything we were looking for, from a business structure standpoint to a community to a long-term focus, that made a lot of sense for us, and why we were so excited to support Polkadot.
Awesome. Thanks.
Cool. Then I'll chime in. Interlay started off as a research project, actually, and we've been following Polkadot since 2016, actually, when the first paper came out. So for us, basically, it has always been a quite interesting project, and the idea of having one system that allows you to build an instance of your own chain specialized to a specific use case, but then still allows you to interconnect and communicate easily with other systems within this network. That was always kind of an approach that seemed very interesting and promising. So essentially, we were initially just going to, looking to expedite the development of cross-chain technology. And then it seemed that Polkadot would be definitely a good place to start. And we found a very good cooperation with the Web3 Foundation, and essentially also their interest to actually build a decentralized bridge. Because of course, building a decentralized system and making sure that it's really trusted and secure, and holding everything to very high standards, it's not very easy, especially for every project in early development. But we were very positively surprised that from the start, there was always a drive for Polkadot to keep things trusted and decentralized. And hence, basically, it made the choice quite easy. And we've been working with Parity and Web3 very productively since then. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great reason. So I think now it's my turn. Basically, the reason why, obviously, some of the reasons overlap. Nate mentioned, very things that we definitely are super helpful. So when we were designing Reef, our goal was to try to defragment somehow the DeFi ecosystem in terms of offering our users access to multiple ecosystems. And this is an extremely hard problem to solve. And Polkadot, how I see Polkadot, a lot of users are asking, is it Polkadot versus Ethereum? I think this is comparing apples and oranges. This is not how it. I see Ethereum in the future being plugged in as a parachain, basically, because Polkadot is the internet of blockchains. the whole cross-chain communication layer that's being built right now is extremely valuable, because through this, parachains will be able to send states around, and we can finally defragment the ecosystems. So this is one of the biggest reasons, because Polkadot was really focused on the cross-chain communication. And additionally, which is extremely good, is the kind of the backwards compatibility. I would say is you have these EVM palettes where everything that people built on Ethereum, it can still work perfectly fine on Polkadot. So the work that this landscape generally did, the whole open source community that spent like a lot of years, this is not thrown away. This will work here, and it will work better and faster. So then what this means is I believe Solidity has even more potential, but due to the gas fees and all of those issues on Ethereum, we as developers cannot express the full capacity. So this is the second reason why we chose Polkadot, because they're very EVM friendly. On top, besides that, options are always great to have. So being able to write code in Rust or build your own runtime module. Write smart contracts in Ink, which is still Rust basically, and write your own modules from scratch. And additionally, create a parachain in a few seconds. They give you all of these runtime modules, which are extremely hard to code yourself. So now we can focus more on the upper layer, so not on the lowest infrastructural layer, which takes a lot of time to get right, and the talent pool that is competent to build the lowest infrastructure layer is extremely rare on this planet. So Polkadot allows us basically to focus on the upper infrastructural, like DeFi infrastructure, more like user-centric product. And this was the other reason. And the last one was obviously Web3 and Parity are behind. And those are one of the most reputable companies. We've seen what they did with Ethereum, how they expanded this ecosystem beyond what anyone could imagine. So those were the reasons why we chose to be on Polkadot. Cool. That was a nice round. Then I have the second question, which is when it comes to onboarding in the Polkadot ecosystem. Maybe each of us can share the experience. How is it, for example, when you try to onboard new talent or existing developers getting switched from one ecosystem to the other? What was this onboarding experience look like when it comes to community documentation and developers and the whole ecosystem? And do you have some ideas of where can certain improvements be done? Maybe we can start with Alexei this time.
Sure, happy to do that. So from our perspective, I think choosing Rust was definitely a big advantage for Polkadot, simply because it's a very interesting language that has gained a lot of traction recently. Also, has been designed very carefully with a lot of caveats in mind that previously we have seen in C, C++. And it definitely has an advantage over Solidity because it just comes with a more robust setup and with much more tooling already in place just for Rust. Now, of course, if you use Substrate, it's a kind of a framework around that. So it does mean that there are some changes and you need to get accommodated to that. But once you know how Substrate works, I think it's a very good framework to basically start building blockchains, as Denko mentioned earlier. You have a lot of the base tooling and basically code that you would typically have to write yourself if you want to build a blockchain from scratch. That's already there. So you can really just focus on building your application. As for tooling and documentation, we started building with Substrate a year ago, and of course it has come very far since then. We were looking into how to do more efficient testing, and on the low level stuff, how to mock stuff and everything. And since then, we've seen so much improvements and so much support from Parity that I think looking over, towards the next 2-3 years, I definitely think Substrate's here to stay, and a lot of other blockchain ecosystems will adopt that. And of course, last but not least, from the developer side, we feel that from what we've seen, it's easier actually to onboard good Rust engineers into this ecosystem because, Rust kind of gives you this good basis of knowledge. And I think the pool of developers who are familiar with Rust is much bigger than the pool of developers who understand blockchain and are familiar with Solidity. Yeah, I think definitely that's kind of at least something that we've observed over the past months.
Nice. Yeah.
So we'll just follow the same order backwards. So I'll hop in. So I think we had probably a bit of a different onboarding, and we came more from like the community side as we were doing infrastructure, and I think they've done a great job enabling folks, whether you're building infrastructure or you're going to build a parachain. There's just so many people building that there's great places where you can go like learn what everybody else is doing. You can talk to people, and then obviously the Substrate Builders program gives a ton of resources and help to teams that are committed to building on Polkadot and need some technical guidance. And so documentation is always like the hardest thing I think to nail, and I think they've done a good job. It continues to improve. And for us, back to something you mentioned earlier, Denko, around Rust is a very powerful language, and I think Alexei's right that it's gaining more and more popularity, and it is hard to find Rust developers. I mean, we continue to hire, and it is a hard skill to find right now. I think it'll be easier and easier, but why we built Moonbeam was kind of partly tied to that, in that we didn't feel like every team needed their own blockchain, and so providing ETH devs the ability to just write in Solidity that they already know, that they're already comfortable with, that they have this whole ETH community kind of built around. So like I said, we have kind of a different focus on that, but providing the ability for folks to come in easily and start writing in Solidity, and then longer term potentially say, okay, I'm built on Moonbeam, this is great. I have access to the Polkadot ecosystem, but long term, I want to build my own parachain. Great. Like, you now know the resources, the teams, the people. You can skill up on your Rust skills. You can add resources as needed. And then, further down the line, you can kind of go build your own blockchain. So that's kind of I guess a bit of a different spin on it, but still aligned with, I think, what everybody thinks here.
Great.
Okay, as far as we're concerned, I mean, definitely, it's absolutely true that there's a really great support system. Obviously, the modular system and the substrate, which makes building customized blockchains, is extremely valuable. But I would say that the support system is one of the things which also really, really puts Polkadot in a class of its own. And notice that that's great both from Parity and from Web3. And notably, I'd like to second what was already said, that the Builders program is really great. Specifically, not just that it's a support forum, but also that they have a sort of pacing mechanism, I would say, in some ways, with the 6-week check-ins, which actually I think is great, because it sort of makes sure that everyone is actually on pace and on time, and that really, I think, helps for the whole ecosystem, not just for individual projects. Another thing is that we've observed that whenever we've had several issues in the course of the time that we've been building on the substrate, and even if we didn't get let's say answers right away, we got a lot of support. Both the community and the people who were appointed to support have been really responsive, so that's really great. And I'd also like to add another point, which Alexei mentioned earlier, namely that in addition to all of those structures, we really like the cooperative spirit of the other substrate projects. Because, well, first, we personally find that there are a lot of synergies, and there's also a lot of willingness to cooperate and build beneficial relationships. So, and again, Interlay and Moonbeam are just two examples of projects that we're working with. So that's another thing which I think is very valuable.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So let me tell the guys about our experience so far. Obviously, some of the things that you guys mentioned, like the substrate program, this is all super helpful. We really like the whole onboarding experience when it comes to you have like a playground where just trying to put myself into shoes of a developer that knows Rust but doesn't know blockchain, so he needs to learn all of those things. So I think the playground is great. It's very easy to deploy things, to start running yourself. The modular infrastructure is pretty easy to understand. Every runtime module is well documented. It's very comprehensive of what it does and why. I think one of the kind of thing that I think can be further improved is to lower the technical barrier of entry is maybe some pre-requirements, like what would be maybe some playground where people can learn what the blockchain does from scratch. I think the kind of this space here assumes that everyone who comes in knows like what blockchain means and how does it work, and assumes that people know what consensus algorithms mean, because we've been here for years and this is like normal to us. But I think this is one thing that I believe can be improved, where new people can get like some course, some pre-requirements that they can go, and again it can be like interactive, and they can go through it, and then the onboarding will basically have a lower barrier of entry. So this was one of the like things that can be improved, but there are so many, like you guys already covered all the positive aspects, and now I think we can extend this question to the next one, where is we can discuss more about like the grant program and the tooling. So we all know that a certain ecosystem needs to achieve certain maturity, where there is like tools, deployment, CLI, products, something that developers require to build. So my question is, what do you guys think about the pace that the Polkadot ecosystem is moving when it comes to this? Maybe we can do we can draw some comparisons with the Ethereum ecosystem, which already like has like tooling, etc. So what do you think about this? Do you think maybe the grants program can be extended, where some of the biggest projects can also maybe like guide or like help fund things that are necessary for the ecosystem per se? So some ideas and opinions about this. Maybe we can start from Alexei again.
Sure. I mean, I definitely think that the tooling has improved since we joined Polkadot and started building on Substrate. But definitely there's always room for improvement. And I think one of the major things that we need to figure out is standardization, but also the UX side of things. So right now, I believe one of the reasons why Ethereum was so successful and what made onboarding of users so easy is MetaMask, essentially. The way that you should just basically use any browser and interact with any DeFi app. Now we have Polkadot.js, and that's definitely already going in that direction. But I still think that we can put much more resources into this and make this much more usable and approachable to the broader public and to users who are not particularly familiar with how each parachain works and how exactly this communication across parachains would look like. So I do think, and this is also what we've seen with our alpha testnet. So it was very functional user interface and everything was working. But the feedback that we got was, okay, it works, but please make it much easier. And basically we spent the last 1.5 months basically simplifying everything, making sure the user processes are very smooth. But still, I think even if we do this as a single parachain, I believe that we should all collaborate to actually expand and focus on essentially improving the UX and making onboarding easier for end users. And that's basically my main takeaway. So I think wallets, browser extensions, and basically seamless integration across parachains are, I guess, the main thing that we can expand upon.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the grants team has done a great job over at the Web3 Foundation. I think as Polkadot grows, I think that team will probably continue to grow. I mean, there seems to be more and more interest coming into the Polkadot ecosystem daily. And so, I think that's a good challenge to kind of have, is how can they continue to scale the grants program? How can they figure out, what programs they want to be able to fund and what are some new initiatives? But I completely agree with Alexei that it's really got to be focused at this point about now that parachains are kind of getting in the state, maybe to launch in the next, call it, 3 to 6 months. There's going to be a ton of end user problems that will need to be thought about, and really a ton of focus kind of shifted into that area. And so the end user UX is huge. As you mentioned, Polkadot.js is great, But for your everyday user, it still can be a little tough to understand everything. And so, stepping back and really thinking about some of the Web 2 applications and the usability, the design that could go into things that made it easy for an everyday user to set up an online bank account and things along those lines, where traditionally that was scary when it moved to an app or online. But it got better and better over time. I think we'll continue to see that. And that's where I think probably the Web3 Foundation is really going to focus, is how do we make it super easy, even easier than MetaMask. I think there's still some major challenges with something like MetaMask. How do we make it as easy as possible to get your everyday person who's just interested in crypto into the Polkadot ecosystem, able to interact with whether it's governance or whatever it might be. How do we make that as easy as possible? So I would say that is going to be a huge focus for everybody here, but also the Web3 Foundation. And in terms of like the developer tooling, I think they'll continue to focus on that as well. That can always be improved, but I can't necessarily speak to some of the maybe shortcomings that might be there.
So in terms of the grants program, I mean, our experience is good. We are, appreciate the fact that we've achieved a grant, and we think that it makes sense that it's directed for use beyond also Equilibrium. So I don't have any concrete suggestions right there, but I think in terms of the tools, what we're really looking forward to is to using XCMP and Spree. That's especially important for us for our business logic, which is really going live now, and that's the main focus. So we're very much looking forward and have big expectations. In terms of what could be stressed more, what could be facilitated more, we would appreciate if Web3 Parity could put more focus on endorsing certain tools like bridges, oracles, and layer 2 scaling solutions.
Right. That's really great insights. To add on top, I really agree with Nate. I think the substrate program right now, in the eyes of certain non-tech, non-blockchain developers, seems like unachievable, because they think that the only way to get a grant is if they build something very like low-level cryptographic, etc. So this is basically a call to action to the people who are watching. If there are like certain people who are good at UI, UX and designers, like there is so much to do here. There is so much to do, because in order to take this ecosystem to mainstream, we need to really focus on the UX, on the whole onboarding of the users, which is what we are trying to do with Reef basically. And there has definitely been some efforts here from the ecosystem, but I also think this is the one thing that can that has a lot of potential to grow.
Yeah, Denko, can I hop in again? Just to kind of echo on what you had said, and that I don't think it's necessarily like a Polkadot issue. I think it's more of just a crypto issue. I mean, it's the whole industry needs to take a step forward in terms of the usability of everything, of every end user focused platform. I mean, if you look at Web 2 applications, take like a bigger company, developer teams, like a quarter of them are just focused on end user friction and design and thinking about how users are going to use it. But that was something kind of eye opening to our team, is when we came in, if you looked at a lot of these applications, like it seemed like the end user stuff was kind of like an afterthought. It was like, let's figure out how to like make this really work. Well, how's somebody going to interact with it? Well, we'll figure that out later. And so, I think it's more of like a crypto as a whole issue to really think about how do we expand the pie to get more users in versus just kind of an echo chamber where it's folks that are already in this ecosystem. They understand how to use the tools. They'll especially DeFi, they'll run through any hurdle you kind of put in front of them from an end user UX perspective. They'll figure it out. But your everyday user doesn't really have that kind of ability, and so it's really just trying to expand the entire pie for the ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely agree there. Alexei mentioned briefly about standardization, so I guess we can expand on this. What do you guys think about this? I hear like every day that this becomes like a bigger and bigger question. So like standardization when it comes to tokens, ERC20, stable coins, wrapped assets. How can we achieve equilibrium? You know, when it comes to this, where all the projects are satisfied and everyone kind of agrees to use it, because as we know, the more instances we have of wrapped assets, the more different kind of token standards we have. It's getting extremely hard for wallets. It's getting hard for exchanges to integrate, and the liquidity gets fragmented even further. So what do you think about this? What's the best approach, or maybe some idea, or how do you see this moving forward?
Well, I would love to jump in here if I may, because this is actually a topic that's pretty close to our hearts at Equilibrium. And actually, you guys probably know that you do know, because in fact, both Moonbeam and Interlay have been among the projects that we've sort of collected feedback from. We've tried to revive the token standards initiative that's on Riot. And we absolutely agree that we need token standards, and I think this applies not just to DeFi. This applies actually to all of the projects in the Polkadot ecosystem who are using tokens. And obviously, we know that you can't really do things without the standards. I mean, just look at ERC20 and the impact that that's had on Ethereum. So, with that in mind, we feel that it needs to be pushed forward, and obviously that already been out there. So Gavin has suggested a particular solution, special code language, and Akala has proposed a PSP approach. And what we think is that we've interviewed now, we've requested from 12 projects specifically, concretely approach them to give us feedback on their needs. And our approach has been that since this is a very complicated topic, many multifaceted topic, to start with one sort of common denominator, and to look specifically at something actually you mentioned, Denko, is to look at how the wallets figure in, and look at the implications of XCMP for wallets. And we were hoping that based on that, we could get some kind of common denominator and starting point to at least start with one concrete standard. We did get good, solid feedback from 12 projects, among them Interlay and Moonbeam. That's really great. What we did find out from that feedback is that, yes, of course, the needs are very diverse. Plus, we still see our solution a little vague, but nonetheless, it's also an invitation and a call for everyone else who hasn't answered yet to participate, is that the best option might be to use a sort of an RPC solution, and to introduce a method to translate between metadata, like account balances and total issuance and things like that. And to use customized RPCs and standardized APIs. Whereas the logic of individual RPCs could be transmitted to the overall system logic. So what I would like to sort of use this question for is to invite people who haven't heard about this group yet to join and to get into the discussion and to put in your input, because although 12 projects have given valuable suggestions, it's still not enough. And the thing that's really missing for us is, in fact, the feedback of wallets. So we would love to have more participants involved in this, because we think, just like the DeFi Alliance, this is something that everyone needs to get involved in order for it to really be productive. So that's an update from my side. And yeah, I think that this absolutely needs to be pushed forward. So we're hoping that we're still going to get some answers from people.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely agree. And I think we definitely need an initiative and definitely need to work together to agree on a standard. I think it's probably going to be tricky because there's so many different applications. And I guess that's kind of the caveat of having everyone build their own execution environments. You have so much freedom that of course, you want to tune it back to exactly what you're building. Whereas in Ethereum, you basically have some common denominator. It's the same system you're building on, which makes things a bit easier. So I definitely think with XCM, and I hope actually, and fingers crossed, that this is going to give the push to agree on a single standard, because essentially that's what everybody agrees on, right? We need XCM, we need XCMP and Spree and so on. We need this to work. So I believe that whatever works with XCMP will be adopted. The question is, well, what is it going to be, and how much customization effort does each team then have to face? I also think, so one point, and that's not necessarily related to generally like standardization discussions, but like general discussions on Polkadot. What we found also coming from like Ethereum research is that a lot of the communication has been happening on Element. But as a newcomer, if you join the ecosystem, and it's very hard to collect all the materials, because of course the chats are like super long and you have to search and scroll through these long chat histories. So definitely like having documents shared across everybody, like with this Token 7's initiative, is super helpful. And actually we're hoping, in fact, that potentially we could move towards a more permanent kind of discussion structure, maybe like forums and so on, where you can easily like search for topics and not just scroll through chats. This is probably sidetracking it a bit, but I definitely think that this would make kind of discussions around standardization easier. Yeah, but that's kind of just my 2 cents on this.
Great.
Yeah, past couple of weeks, as Lesley had mentioned, we've been in discussion with their team about what we need for Moonbeam, because we do support ERC20, and so what does that look like? It all, everyone kind of has their own ingredients that need to be kind of looked at, and so it's really just it's a community effort, and just making sure that all the teams that are committed to building a parachain are able to kind of come to the table together and kind of put their cards out and say, okay, these are the pieces I need. I do think that like, though it needs to be community led, I think parity in Web3 need to be involved as well. I mean, Gavin's obviously got got XCMP and Spree and everything that he's kind of laid out. But I think that there should be kind of like a bit of a guiding hand there, just making sure that everybody is kind of getting heard, that it makes sense, for the long term, versus just thinking right now, like, okay, how do we interconnect? But long term, does that really scale? And how, like, what's the best way so that as other projects come in, as new teams start to build, that it's not prohibitive to them, that it makes sense to be able to scale it, kind of organically over the years. So I do think that, I think I saw a couple of weeks ago, there was kind of a GitHub page that got pulled together where I think it's starting to kind of ramp up, but I do think every team is kind of getting into this parachain readiness stage. And I think everybody's got so much work on their plate that getting folks to kind of come to the table has been tough. But it's certainly a pressing matter that I think will start to work its way to the forefront.
Got it. Thanks for those. I think I have not much to add here. It's pretty clear. Like there is something happening. Obviously, this needs to ramp up further. We have to see the cross-chain communication layer, which is basically a next question, and then I guess it takes one step at a time. People will come with different design proposals, and then how I see it, it's like it's not going to be like some voting, but it will mostly be based on usability. So the most used one will eventually capture the market, like like the first mover kind of who gets adopted by exchanges. I think this is more like it's a very hard problem, because it's not decided by just one kind of party, which is just the Polkadot developers, but it's more like some other players have some power, and basically whatever some of the big exchanges chooses, maybe other projects will probably follow that, and yeah, makes sense. So back to the XCMP. So as we've discussed, this is one of the very big feature. It's still quite early. It needs like a lot of work to be done in order to be to a point where it would be usable by the parachains. But how do you see this? What's your opinion on XCMP? Maybe some comparisons can be drawn with like IBC. And how do you see the cross parachain communication vision compared maybe to other ecosystems, and how this can really add a lot of value to Polkadot. Maybe Alexei, you can start if you want. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I believe that XMP or Spree later on is kind of the heart piece of the Polkadot design, essentially. I mean, this is what allows us to communicate across different parachains. It's also one of the most difficult things to get right, because I believe that there's kind of two steps here. And this also ties in quite well with the IBC comparison. IBC and Cosmos basically, I believe, was designed to have a completely heterogeneous system. You spin up your own chain, and then if you want to connect to other chains, you basically make sure that you know who you're connecting to. You have to make sure that you actually know that the chain is secure. And that's basically like connecting Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're completely independent. Within Polkadot, the idea is, I believe, going forward to have one shared security model. That if, for example, Moonbeam or Equilibrium or Reef connect to the BTC Parachain and one access Polka BTC, you actually know that the correctness of the message transfer, that the correct execution of the assets being moved and actually locked on our system, unlocked on your system, that this will be enforced by Polkadot's consensus. And I think definitely that's very beneficial, because this means you don't have to build a custom SPV or light client for each chain that you connect to. But on the other hand, it also is, of course, very difficult to get right. And I believe XMP essentially follows kind of the similar heterogeneous approach as IBC does. So in the beginning, we'll all still have to make sure that we are able to verify what's going on the other chain and kind of have some level of trust, meaning that if, for example, you connect two chains on Polkadot and one of them fails with XMP, you still kind of have the problem that, well, the communication will fail, and that in the end, it's kind of not covered by the shared security mechanism. But with Spree, I think that we kind of will get towards a more kind of reliable model. But again, it's a very tough road. I mean, it starts with standardization and also basically figuring out the needs of each system. And I believe there's chains where you'll have some limited communication, maybe a few transactions a day, and then other kind of connections where you have thousands of messages every minute. And of course, kind of allocating the resources in a manner that's fair and also easily accessible is going to be very, very interesting to solve.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that it's probably the once parachains get out the door and that's all kind of ironed out, I think that's the next hurdle that the team over at Parity are really going to be focused on. And I think Alexei's right. It's probably the biggest hurdle, maybe. And again, I have no knowledge of kind of what they think about it, but just from an outsider's perspective, being able to really power that in a sustainable way with, being able to have a token appear on one chain, appear on the other, and know that there's no kind of funny business on the other side. Like that's the value of Polkadot. And so, I mean, I think that's just I'm confident the team's going to get it right, but it's certainly a big hurdle that they'll be clearing, I think, this year. So it's super interesting to see kind of where that goes, and happy to hopefully add our input from the Moonbeam side and work with everybody involved to make sure we get it right for the future moving forward.
I personally would second what Alexei said. I think that what we've got here is that we're going to need XCMP and Spree and the bridges all together. So essentially, because we're talking about communication on the one hand on the level between the parachains on the substrate in the ecosystem, and then communication beyond them between other blockchains external to Polkadot. And we really need to have all of that in place at the same time to really see the full impact. But we're very much looking forward to it. It's obviously, like I said, a key enabler for our particular products and use cases, and we have high expectations. We think that's going to be bridges ourselves. Already we've started with the Ethereum bridge even before that goes live on Polkadot. So the idea is to have that in place and have all of our products enabled, at least bridging to Ethereum as soon as possible before even becoming a parachain. So, but I think that when that's in place for the whole ecosystem and connected through the parachains, then that's going to be great, because obviously then you're going to have a multiplied effect where the whole community is profiting. So very much looking forward to it.
Definitely, yeah. This is a crucial part for many projects, parachains, as well as project building on top of existing parachains. It's what we've all signed up basically for. To achieve the full vision of the product. Same with us. We need to have like stable cross-chain communication, especially it has to work reliably, right? Like that's the most important one. There are, for example, coins like that have like different properties, and they change, let's say, the supply. They have elastic supply, for example, and when certain things happen on one chain, like the synchronization needs to work, and it's I believe the best way to go is, as Alexei mentioned, we start from the standardization. We make sure to get that right. We make sure that everything works cross-chain when it comes to that, and then we can add more complexities to it. Just make sure to start from somewhere. So but there is a lot of work being done here. I believe maybe we'll see like in the next couple of months we'll see something cross-chain happening, something stable. Cool. So the Parachain auction was a little bit mentioned. This is obviously one of the biggest, if not the biggest, topics currently. So there are so many mixed opinions. There are so many like uncertainties around this. So let's discuss a little bit about it. Like, how do you guys feel? When do you see it happening? What are the potential challenges with it, and the expected costs, and how do you plan to deal with the potential cost of this?
Sure, I'll go first. So I think Gav, when he did the Decoded event, I think Parachain asked him about it, and he said, like, I could say it'll come next week. I could say it'll come in 6 months. I mean, when we're ready to announce, we'll announce. So, I don't think any of us here have like a firm date that we know like these are going to start. I think from what we've seen in the a lot of the communication between all the teams is somewhere like March timeframe. That's kind of looks like we might have lost Alexei. So maybe that's kind of when we're kind of marching towards. That's kind of what we're focused on is maybe the March timeframe for Kusama, and then a couple months after that potentially for our Moonbeam deployment on Polkadot. I do think that they're just based on our Telegram. I think the main question is like, how do I do this? What is a crowd loan? What are you doing for raising these funds? And so I think there is just a lot of we talked about end user friction from a platform perspective, but there's also a lot of education that we're trying to do that I think the Polkadot ecosystem is trying to do to figure out like this is a pretty novel idea. And how do you make sure that the people who want to join these, whether you're doing a crowd loan or another, function, how are you going to get the end users as much info as you can get so that they're ready for it, right? If they're locking KSM or they're locking dots, where do they go? How do they do it? There is a lot of ambiguity right now around how it's done. So our focus right now is just trying to make sure that as we get closer to our Moon River, which is our Kusama deployment, and then Moonbeam, it's just end user education, what's going on, how we're doing it, how they can potentially participate. Details aren't 100% finalized at this point, but I think that's probably the burning question right now is how do we enable end users to participate in these, and just making sure that everyone can do it.
Would love to jump in here. I think I agree with Nate. I think that there is a lot of uncertainty around it, but I agree with him on the first point that and also you, Denko. I think that exciting going to be a major event in this year, right? I think, and not just for the DeFi community or for the blockchain community. I think this is actually sort of in some ways writing history. At the same time, there is a lot of uncertainty, and so and that's everything. That's starting from dates, covering costs, and even what to choose. Do we want Kusama or do we want Polkadot parachains, or do we want both, right? But what it's for us personally, what it's actually caused is it's kind of forced us to sort of come up with a on the one hand, solid, but at the same time, flexible strategy to approach this, a strategy that kind of takes account of different variables. So what we've come up with is a two-phased approach, and in the first phase, we're going to offer a swap, a DOT for EQ, which will prepare the basis for the crowd loan. In terms of the that it's going to be, I agree with Nate. I think it's probably going to be Kusama in March, and then Polkadot starting anywhere from April after that. I think the difficulty in terms of challenges is that if you're deciding whether or not to do just one or the other, right, just Kusama or Polkadot, it has implications for the long term, because let's say Kusama is kind of in some ways a must-have, but if you do Kusama, then it kind of means that if you add another one, if you add a Parachain on Polkadot, then you kind of have to have either two in parallel. So you're almost having like two parallel projects on two Parachains, or you're inconveniencing your clients, right? Because they have to switch. So it's this kind of difficult decision, and that's all still in the air, even for us. In terms of costs, we assume that there are some parameters that we know that you can kind of make guess based on those about the rough prices that the auction could have. And there are also opportunity costs that have to be taken account of. So we're trying to take account of both of those, and also offer bonuses to incentivize users, and we think we've got a pretty good plan in place. So it looks like it can be pretty attractive, but yeah, there are also a lot of uncertainties. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, cool. I mean, like Interlay, we can't really say as much on this topic because, I mean, we build Polkadot EC essentially as a common good system. So there is no kind of Interlay token on the platform. It's going to be Polkadot EC. It's backed by DOT collateral, moderator stablecoin. And essentially our goal is actually provide an infrastructure component. So it's basically our success essentially is to make sure that all the other applications can easily use the PDC Parachain. Which means that on the other hand, luckily, we don't have to kind of worry as much about the Parachain auction. On the other hand, this means, of course, that on the business side of things, there's much more thinking to do, basically, of how to make the system scale and how to expedite the integrations across both Kusama and Polkadot. And we're definitely looking, for example, to deploy to Polkadot and Kusama at the same time. But then, of course, this means for us, how do we maintain both bridges? Are they the same code? Are they different? What are the differences between Polkadot and Kusama? Are there any implications for the security models? And then, of course, I mean, our goal would be that as a user, if you want to move Bitcoin to Polkadot, you should not care if it's on Kusama or Polkadot itself. You should just be worrying about the application that you can use. But essentially putting this and hiding all these differences and these different communication steps from the user is definitely a challenge that we'll probably spend some time on working. But at least from our perspective, we'll try to support both as an infrastructure component. And yeah, but definitely see that it's on one hand a very interesting approach, I think, also to have this economic test network. I mean, for us, for example, a lot of the security of the system depends on correct modeling of economics. And we spent 2 years on different research projects and essentially modeling and formally proving that the system is secure. But in the end, you can only really gain confidence once you've tested it in production in wild. Basically, starting with a private testnet, public, Rococo beta, and then the question is, well, maybe it even makes sense to first go on Kusama with smaller amounts and basically strict limits on deposits and make sure everything works smoothly there. And because, I mean, users now, actually malicious attackers actually have incentive to break the system because they can earn money. Maybe not as much as on Polkadot, but it's still kind of financial incentives behind that. And only then, I believe that's, from what I understand, also the plan of General Polkadot and Kusama to collaborate in this way, to basically have this easier on-ramp to Kusama, and then the more stricter, the more kind of audited, curated onboarding into Polkadot. Which of course makes it, again, difficult for projects to choose either or both. So I think definitely it's going to be very interesting to see how projects decide and how this thing develops.
Yeah, it feels kind of like Kusama has taken like a life of its own. You know, when they announced Kusama, it was like the wild cousin, it was the canary, you know, when code was going to ship there first and then up to Polkadot. And But since then, I feel like we've even seen some projects that have said, like, I'm just going to do a Czuma deployment potentially, and I'm just going to live here. I don't necessarily need some of the more, I don't want to call it enterprise grade security, but some of the benefits that kind of come from Polkadot. And so it's definitely going to be interesting to see once the Parachain auctions start. We're going to be doing both. We're a platform, and so we feel like we need to have it on both. We're going to follow the exact parity model, but the teams who are kind of deploying on Moonbeam, they'll have a decision. Do they start on Moon River and then go to Moonbeam? Do they just do Moon River? And so we need to provide both. But I think that will be super interesting a year from now to just see the teams in the ecosystem. There'll be two potentially completely different ecosystems, and it'll be super interesting to see.
And maybe to add to that, I do envision, and I think that's also been in discussion for some time, that there will be some, if not built from the start, definitely there'll be a community effort to build a seamless bridge, essentially, from Czuma to Polkadot. So that different teams, for example, even if you're building on Moon River and then want to switch to Moonbeam, that you probably can use the bridge to seamlessly move back and forth. And I do believe that there will be something in place there. It's definitely going to be challenging to build, but I also kind of ultimately see that this is necessary. Otherwise, we may end up with a fragmented network, which is, I think, something that we probably want to avoid going forward.
Awesome. Thanks for the great answers there. Regarding the auction and Reef's opinion on that, actually the reason why we chose to build on top of other parachains initially is because of the costs and the timeline, and we wanted to move faster. But we are also definitely considering becoming a parachain ourselves as well. So that's it from the questions that I prepared. I see there are some questions in the community around here. So one question that I found for Moonbeam is what's the transaction per second? I guess this is one metric where people always want to know about when a new ecosystem develops.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Right now we're doing a bunch of benchmarking, and that's part of our Parachain readiness that we're kind of going through now is doing a lot of benchmarking around speed and finality. At the end of the day, I think we'll release numbers probably in the next month or so. But I think something that we're thinking about is, we're going to probably end up being constrained to when the validators can actually validate the blocks on the relay chain, which is 6 seconds. So I would assume it's probably going to be close to that. But again, we're kind of going through our paces right now to make sure that we can publish the best, the most accurate numbers possible probably in the next month or two.
Got it. Thanks. So there is another question for Reef. There are multiple questions for Reef. Some of them were answered in our AMAs, and I think they have, they can definitely be skipped here. But for example, one question is, will Reef get Parachain on Czuma or Moonbeam? So I think basically, Moonbeam is on top of those, on this infrastructure. So we are deploying our infrastructure on top of Moonbeam as well as Plasm. So to answer your question, our goal is to give our users access to multiple ecosystems. So our infrastructure will be present on basically all the parachains with which we are compatible with. Yeah, I think that's that from that side. I think we should maybe wrap up soon. I think we have 5 more minutes. So basically, there is one more question which I think everyone wants to know. Maybe we can do a round of this question, and then we can wrap up. So what's the best analogy for Ethereum versus Polkadot? This is a hard one.
Maybe we can clarify it. Analogy?
Yeah, analogy. How should people, when they compare it, how should they see Ethereum? Should they see as a competitor to Polkadot, or should they?
Assessment. That's the best way to compare them, essentially. Why analogy?
Yeah.
Yeah, something we talk a lot about when we talk to projects who are interested in accessing, the Polkadot ecosystem, potentially building on Moonbeam is, we don't really like the ETH killer narrative. I think we kind of disagree with that. And I think there were a lot of chains that launched, 2019, 2020 that were framing it that they were going to be the ETH killer and, everybody's going to move over. But I think what we look at is Ethereum has done some amazing things, and there's a massive community there that no one in this space can touch at this point. And so coming in and saying we're going to be the ETH killer, I think is a bit brash. And so we've really just focused on being a complementary network to what Ethereum has done. We may be a bit different than some of the other folks building here, but the fact that we're providing this environment that is just mirrored to ETH, sure, it'll be faster, it'll be cheaper, all those kinds of aspects that Substrate and Polkadot can power. But at the end of the day, coming in and saying we're going to be so much better, I don't think it's a good narrative to kind of put out there. I think we should be collaborative around this. Is just going to help both of the networks continue to scale. And ETH 2.0 comes out, and everything that the bridging efforts that are kind of going on, it's just going to continue to hopefully grow the ecosystem. So it doesn't necessarily answer that question, but we certainly don't like this ETH killer narrative. We think it's really just about let's help scale the entire ecosystem, and that includes Ethereum.
Definitely, I think that's the best explanation. That's the best explanation. I completely see it your way as well.
Yeah, I mean, from a technical perspective at the moment, I believe the biggest difference is that on Ethereum you have one platform, basically with, I guess, easier onboarding than Polkadot at the moment. Because essentially you just go ahead and deploy and use the same tooling. It's the same basis for all systems. But then this also means that you're a bit limited with the functionality you have. For example, I mean, as Interlay for our bridge from Bitcoin to Polkadot, we're using some elliptic curve operations for SEC P256 K1. But these are not really supported in the VM. We would have to basically go low level and try to write something ourselves, and that will basically make things a bit more difficult. So I think this is kind of one benefit that we see on Polkadot. It's not necessarily a killer, and I don't think that this kill narrative makes a lot of sense. I mean, Ethereum has come so far and essentially, I believe, boosted the adoption of the entire blockchain ecosystem. And I believe Polkadot and a lot of other systems are actually benefiting from what Ethereum has achieved. And on the other hand, I also believe that Polkadot's approach in basically allowing everybody to build their custom execution environment and specialize in use cases and applications, I do think Ethereum's going to monitor and look what's actually going to happen. And Ethereum will also be looking closely at how the Parachain auctions perform, and because they have the same questions to answer, right? When ETH 2.0 comes out and they move towards a more distributed model and more application-specific systems, they're going to have the same questions that Polkadot has to answer today. And I do believe that the systems will coexist. I mean, you see, for example, Cosmos and Polkadot, that two systems that consist of independent blockchains, and they basically are coexisting. And I know there's a lot of efforts to bridge Polkadot and Cosmos, and basically that no matter what you're building on, you'll be able to interact with the other systems. And I think that going forward in 3, 4, 5 years, you won't, as a user, will not necessarily care if is it a Polkadot Parachain, is it a Cosmos zone, is it an ETH shard? You'll just be moving around seamlessly across different applications. So I think definitely collaboration and working together and pulling kind of on the same string is definitely necessary. Plus, I mean, we're still a very small niche market looking at the globe from a global perspective. So, fighting each other with rakes and everything doesn't really make sense, in my opinion, at this stage.
I would agree that it's less, in my opinion, it's less a question of, sort of a classical competition, and that's all. I think it's a question of the needs of the users. Okay, so specifically here, I've got the developers in mind and the particular projects. So I think before you decide, opt for Polkadot or for Ethereum, you need to think about the needs of your application. So considering the particulars of the two, protocols, obviously you're going to have different options, and the one or the other will be better suited all in all as a package. So considering, I think that what both Nate and Alexei said makes sense. I think that if you're looking for smart contracts and you're not looking for extreme customization, then Ethereum could be enough, depending if the other factors are in place for your particular use case, depending on whether scalability is an issue. Considering you have no classical smart contracts on Polkadot, but you can do a lot more in detail with parachains, then it's again a question: do you need a parachain? Do you need a parathread? How much effort are you putting into it? What exactly are the needs of your particular products? So I think that this is a question that can't be answered as a sort of in a black and white way for everyone. It really depends on the particular context.
Yep, definitely. I agree with that. There are so many things that we are still, figuring out. It's all about abstracting away complexities. It's all about making everything simpler. We are still at, if we take a look at the whole stack, we are still like at the lower level where people still like are split between ecosystems and what is Parachain, what is Parathread. But eventually we are slowly taking this landscape mainstream by adding all of those layers in between, which will make UX better and improve everything. So that was it. That's it for this panel. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for your time. This is the first Polkadot DeFi Alliance panel, and there will be more coming soon. And for the other people who have a lot of Reef questions, we'll have our own dedicated live AMA. So then you can ask all your questions there. This is a Polkadot DeFi Alliance event. So again, thanks everyone for participating, and see you on the next panel.
Thank you very much, Denko. Thanks.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.